Healer's log, stardate 0002. Coordinates set. Transmission begins. Welcome to Innerverse Dialogues, where we practice the inner work out loud, examining how language shapes the worlds we live in. We spend our lives longing for a sense of belonging when we've been belonging the whole time. What if the feeling of not belonging was never the truth about you? What if it was a story shaped by systems that needed you to question your worth in order to maintain its power? Today, we're going to sit with that. So for today, we will begin this reflection with a simple but disruptive question. What if belonging was something or was never something that we had to earn or prove, negotiate, or perform for, but something that has always been true? See, in my research on restorative justice discourse, I examine how language shapes our understanding of justice, identity, and belonging. And what I found is this: systems don't just organize society, it uses language, discourse, narratives, stories to organize meaning. They shape how we interpret. It shapes how we interpret who's worthy, who's credible, who belongs, and who doesn't. And those meanings don't stay out there. They become internal. Through language and discourse, systems create narratives about merit, worthiness, legitimacy, responsibility, and power. And over time, those narratives become the stories that we carry. Stories that sound like, I have to prove myself. I don't want to take up too much space. I need to be better to be accepted. I'm just lucky to be here. But those aren't truths. Those are learned interpretations. That's why I wrote in my dissertation, we be longing for a sense of belonging when we've been belonging the whole time. I belong. Belonging is not something that systems give us. Belonging is something systems can obscure, but they cannot erase it. Belonging is not a reward. It's not conditional. It's not something you earn through compliance and checklists and checkboxes. Belonging is inherent. And this is where we have to be honest about something. Even systems designed for healing, like restorative justice, can unintentionally reproduce harm when they operate within those same narratives of control, respectability, worthiness, and power. So listen, if the underlying story is still some people have to prove they belong, then the practice will look different. But the logic, that colonial logic, remains the same. The hierarchical logic remains the same. And this is why I developed joy during my research. And joy stands for justice operating in you. Joy is not about fixing yourself. It's about becoming aware of the narratives that you've inherited and that you hold internally. So let me share something. In my dissertation, when I originally started my dissertation, I had a different title. My title was The Weight of Your Whiteness. And it's a good title, and it's a true title. But as I began to do the work and do the research and develop joy, I recognize that the systems of oppression that I aim to dismantle, that are external, that are outside of me, they were still operating in me. Because technically, when I said the weight of your whiteness, it was like I was pointing a finger. It was like I was assigning blame to someone and not recognizing and realizing that I too have been impacted and am impacted, have been prone and suspect to the assimilation through colonial education, right? So for me, I had to be honest and true to myself as a person who engages in truth telling and truth speaking. I had to admit that's not reflective of who I am and what I believe and what truly being restored to myself looked like. So I changed the title of my dissertation to Becoming a Beloved Community. It has a subtitle, but I'm just going to give you the main title, and you can go search it for yourself. I'll drop it somewhere so you can find it. So that's why justice operating in you is so important. It's about asking, where did this story come from? Where did I get this narrative? And who does it serve? And most importantly, is the story that I've inherited or I'm listening to or believing or regurgitating, is it aligned with truth? So I want to invite you into a moment of reflection. Nothing that you have to answer out loud. Just notice. When was the first time you felt like you had to prove you belong? What was happening? Who was there? And what did you learn about yourself in that moment? And more importantly, what story did you carry forward from that experience? And I want to say this because whatever that moment was, it didn't define your worth. It revealed the presence of a system that may have been hidden or unknown to you. And it needed you to question it. So, what if instead of asking, do I belong here? You begin asking, what story taught me that I don't? And what if you allowed yourself to consider that belonging was never missing, that you actually belong? Belonging is not something that systems grant. That's a colonial mindset. That's about power over. It's something systems can hide, can obscure, but never erase. In the next episode, we're going to explore how to work with these stories in real time through what I call the truth transmission sequence. Receive, reflect, reckon, and reworld. It is important that we begin to do this. And that's what I do. I sit and I receive information. I receive stories. I receive narratives. I can receive an email and sometimes things are said in words and language that I need to reflect on. Sometimes something is said and it just doesn't sit right in my spirit. Right? Because even the Bible talks about the words that come out of our mouth. For there is power of life and death in the tongue. Words are powerful because they can frame. I say this over and over again. Words frame. So if you look at a frame, you can take a frame and cut something out so you only see one thing. So what I ask myself and I ask of you is that when you receive information and you reflect, that you widen the frame and reckon with the truth and the reality of what you see, so we can begin reworlding in a way that we can move forward, seeing one another all connected as human beings. Healer's log, closing transmission, coordinates reached. Until next time, pay attention to the stories shaping your world and notice which ones were never yours to carry. Transmission complete. If this resonates with you, follow the podcast because in the next episode, we're going to examine how language has shaped what many of us have come to call imposter syndrome and what happens when we stop framing it as a personal flaw and start naming what's actually at the root. Because you were never the problem, the story was.